Hello everyone, Chaos here, and welcome to another Old School RuneScape video. In the previous one, we talked about Nex coming to Old School RuneScape and her possible drops to fit into the game, along with the upcoming Raids 3 rewards. And today we will do something slightly different in preparation for the release of Group Ironman coming in just a few days as of the release of this video. If you enjoyed today's upload, we have a lot of content like this on the channel, so a subscription with notifications on would be greatly appreciated. And you can join our Discord server by clicking the link in the description below to join our wonderful and growing community. So in today's video, I will give you a refresher of everything you have missed in Old School RuneScape since release to catch up on the most important updates over the years. Now, if you are either an experienced player, someone who has been playing since release, or overall someone who already knows the game from inside out, you can kind of look at this video as a sort of timeline of the coolest updates we've had since 2013. And I'll even sprinkle a few fun facts about some of the pieces of content, so it's also worth your watch. But this time around, I only have two disclaimers for you guys. First and most important is that this video is mostly informative, and if you are looking for a tips and tricks video specifically for Ironman, I am already working on it since I will have to work with some experienced Ironman players to give you guys some of the best tips available, so be on the lookout for that in the upcoming weeks. And finally, I am obviously not going to be able to talk about every single quality of life change, otherwise we would be here for hours. But I will go over the most important ones even if they weren't major content updates. So once again, grab your favorite drink and let's go down memory lane to see how Old School RuneScape has evolved over the years. And let's begin. But first, let's talk about the things you haven't missed if you plan to come back to the game in these upcoming days or even weeks. Most importantly, Ironman will soon be able to buy bonds directly from the Grand Exchange, which is super relevant to all types of Ironman players. Leagues 3, which is a temporary game mode about completing as many tasks as possible in around 2 months, is coming in November, and by earning points you will be able to unlock cosmetic rewards for your account as well as a shiny new trophy to flex. Next, the Zerosian General is coming in just a few months as a sort of expansion to the God Wars dungeon with unique rewards that will complement Old School RuneScape. And we're not gonna just get a copy-paste from RuneScape 2 drops, which included tier 80 armor. And finally, Raids 3 is coming shortly after Next, which will offer new mechanics and rewards, as well as being another expansion this time for the desert area since there's a ton of unused space. Alright, we will start with 2013, and one of the first major additions to the game was the Nightmare Zone. I'm sure most, if not every player has come here at least at some point, and it is one of the oldest updates in the game. This is also the case for the God Wars dungeon, as it wasn't in Old School RuneScape right after launch. And finally, in this golden era of the game, rooftop agility courses were released as a part of the player-designed content poll, and this design by Big Red Japan made it in the game. He's basically the guy who waves at you every time you finish a lap. 2014 started with a few improvements to Slayer, starting with the reintroduction to the Slayer helmet as well as Krakens, and of course a boss variant would come shortly after. And speaking about bosses, one of the best updates to ever bless this game was the addition of pets, which are mini variants of the boss which everyone likes to flex. This year also gave us the Motherlode Mine, which is another addition thanks to the player-designed content, which to this day is one of the best ways to level up mining if you are looking for a chill activity. Clan Wars were also introduced, but let's be honest, these are not super popular anymore and are mostly used to dupe items. And if you don't know anything about that, oh boy, it's a very confusing tale, so that's a story for another video. We were also given the Ironman game mode for the very first time, and the Corporeal Beast also made it into the game along with the Spectral, Arcane, and Elysian Spirit Shields. I guess the Divine Shield was deemed too powerful for Old School RuneScape, so the once most expensive item in the golden era of RuneScape 2 didn't find its way into this version of the game. And as a final addition in 2014, and also as a quick fun fact, we have the Trading Post, which acted like the Grand Exchange since we wouldn't see it being added until a few months later, rendering this update kind of useless. In 2015, the iconic Zulra boss was introduced along with its unique items, all of which continue to be relevant to this day, except maybe the blowpipe in a few scenarios. The Dragon Defender came back to the game as a little addition to the Warriors Guild in Berthorpe. The game was made free to play permanently, which also opened the way and opened the doors for more players to experience RuneScape free of charge. And most importantly, the Grand Exchange would be added to the game as a much better substitute to the previous used Trading Post. Shortly after, Achievement Diaries were brought back into the game as a sort of substitute to the RuneScape 2 task system, which also offered great rewards. We had the little quality of life additions such as F keys, which allow you to move through interfaces quicker, and the addition of platinum tokens for rich players who would surpass the max cash tag value of 2.1 billion GP. The music cape was introduced as a sign of a player unlocking every music track in the game. The Hellhound Slayer boss Cerberus would be added along with the items to create the best in slot boots, which are all still relevant to this day. Shortly after, the max cape was added into the game for players to flex their dedication to old school RuneScape, achieving 99 in all skills with a total level of 2277. Skilling pets also started rolling in, giving players an extra incentive to train their skills even beyond the level 99. And finally, skill capes were all given perks to give players a little boost when doing an activity related to this respective skill. 2016 also gave us a great deal of updates as both brand new content and more quality of life changes, starting with the addition of brand new content to old school RuneScape called Zeya, which also brought the Dragon Warhammer into the game. There's a great video about the history of Zeya by fellow OSRS YouTuber called Colonello, so I'll leave the link in the description below. One of the best quality of life changes coming this year was the release of bank placeholders, so now you wouldn't have to have at least one of each item in your bank anymore to save their spot. After that, Monkey Madness 2 was released, and with it we were given Demonic Gorillas, which offered the still relevant Zenyte jewelry as well as ballista weapons, which people still used for PKing to this day. Zeya also received a few tweaks and additions, most notably the Woodcutting Guild, and with it came a new tree to chop, being the Redwood tree. In 2016 we had a few changes to the Treasure Trails activity as well as clue scrolls. I'll tell you the most important changes to clue scrolls right here, but keep in mind that not all of them were added in 2016. But rather, I would like to get these out of the way quickly, just so you know what's new with them and what their most important changes are. We now have two new tiers of clue scrolls, being Beginner and Master. However, the Master is one of the most challenging ones, but there's chance for great rewards, as more and more items were added to this activity to every tier of clue scroll. However, more 3rd Age items were added, and pieces such as the Druidic Robe top, bottom, and the 3rd Age axe all go for above max cash as of making this video. Clue caskets are now stackable, and both the clue scrolls and the caskets have their own distinct color, so there has never been a better time to do this activity than today. Anyway, moving on, 2016 kept delivering content as the construction skill received a pretty important update. You are now able to build a spirit tree and fairy ring combination in your house, along with an altar to quickly change your spellbook, a restoration pool which replenishes your HP, prayer, stamina, and more, a jewelry box for you not to have a teleporting jewelry at the bank anymore, and finally some other cool additions, both functional and cosmetic. Shortly after, even more skilling pets were introduced, as the first batch only covered 4 skills. The Winter Toad activity was added to Zeya, which is still the staple method to go from level 50 to 99 fire making. Then, the ZMI altar was added into the game as a more relaxing way to get higher runecrafting level, and the last important update of 2016 was the addition of the Hardcore Ironman mode. After your first death, your status will be revoked and you will become a regular Ironman account. 2017 was among the best years in terms of big content updates to this day, starting with the addition to the Chambers of Xeric, which was the first raid to hit the game. What was originally a group activity is now something experienced players can do solo, and surprisingly enough, every single unique drop continues to be relevant and fairly powerful to this day. Probably with the exception of the Elder Maul, which is pretty niche in some activities. By far, the highlight of this year has to be the addition of the Inferno, one of the most challenging activities the game has to offer to this day, which rewarded players with a new best-in-slot melee cape called the Infernal Cape, which also gives you a ton of bragging rights even if you only have one, such as me. This year also gave free-to-play players a Castle Wars minigame to play, just to expand their activities a little bit more, and a brand new area would be added called the Fossil Island. There are a ton of little pieces of content here, and it would be difficult to mention every single one, but some of the most important ones would be bird houses, which are a passive way to train Hunter, the addition of the herbivore, fossil cleaning, ultra compost, and much more. Towards the end of the year, a new Slayer boss was added to this game, this time for the Gargoyles in the form of grotesque guardians. And finally, we had some more nice content added to the wilderness as the Revenant capes were released along the Mage Arena 2. This gave players a new best-in-slot mage cape after completing a nerve-wracking adventure through this barren land. 2018 has a special place in my little heart because it's the year in which I came back to old school RuneScape after quitting in 2012. If you want to hear a little bit about that story, check out the card that just popped up on the top right corner. Anyway, this year started off with a bang, as the first update was the addition of the Dragon Slayer 2 quest. Along with it came a new boss called Vorkath, a new area called the Myths Guild, and a new best-in-slot range cape called the Avis Assembler, as well as many more items and areas and much more content. And speaking of bosses, the second raid was released in the game, and it was the Theater of Blood. Just like the Chambers of Xeric, most of the items coming from this activity are still super useful and relevant to this day, and as of making this video. Who knows if Raids 3 or next might release more powerful items in the future, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. There was a small change done to pickpocketing, and you are now able to obtain coin pouches for you to open, instead of being able to infinitely train thieving with barely any clicks and attention. I have this here not because of its content, but because this update caused a glitch involving max cash dropped by certain sources, and this glitch caused the very first rollback to the game, as things needed to be fixed as soon as possible. Glitches aside, 2018 also saw the release of the mobile version of Old School RuneScape, taking the player count to new heights, and it was a huge boost to the game in terms of numbers and revenue. A new room was added to player-owned houses called the Portal Nexus room, which let us build something called, well, the Portal Nexus, which can hold tons of unlimited teleports for all 4 spellbooks, and it was like an upgrade to the Portal rooms, which originally held only 3 portals. Last but definitely not least, the collection log was added to the game, which let you track your progress in terms of items obtained in many activities through the game, which a lot of people like to complete. Now, 2019 didn't offer a huge amount of content, but we still saw a great deal of important updates through the months, starting with an expansion to Zeah called the Kebos Lowlands, and this gave us the Farming Guild as well as farming contracts, along with many other little additions inside the Farming Guild. A new Slayer Master called Konar, which is the only one who can assign a brand new Slayer creature, and its Voss variant called Hydras. The Alchemical Hydra offers many important drops such as the Hydra's Claw, new best-in-slot melee items, and much more. We were also given new Slayer monsters called Drakes, Worms, and much more. And one more hybrid training method called Aerial Fishing, which trains both fishing and hunter at the same time. After the Kebos Lowlands, Zeah received a small update called the Forthos Dungeon, which offered a lot of mid-game content for players looking to spice things up, as well as a new spider boss called Sarachnis. By far the biggest update this year was the release of the Song of the Elves quest, which was the culmination of the Elf Quest series, and which opens the doors to the Crystal City of the Elves called Prifddinas, or Prifddinas, again, I don't know how to pronounce the names. With it came a new Slayer dungeon, a new skilling boss called Zolcano, and most importantly the addition of the Gauntlet, which offers crystal armor as well as crystal sword, the Blade of Saeldor. In 2021, instead of the blade, you receive an enhanced crystal weapon seed which can be transformed in either the blade or a new powerful bow called the Bow of Ferdinand, again, I don't know how to say this. So this is one of the most lucrative activities in the game as of recording this video. Shortly after, we had more small tweaks to player-owned houses, as we had the addition of the POH board for you to quickly go to someone else's house, and the new Marble Lectern, which lets you make teleport tablets for all spellbooks. 2019 closed out with a few more quality of life changes, as well as the release of a new Fremennik quest called the Fremennik Exiles. This gave us a new Slayer monster called the Basilisk Knight, which drop an item called the Basilisk Jaw, and when combined with the Helm of Natisnot, you get a new best-in-slot melee helmet called the Nezi Face Guard. We were given a brand new boss called the Nightmare of Ashihama, which dropped the Inquisitor armor along with the Inquisitor's mace. To that we also had the Nightmare Staff and 3 orbs to attach to it for the staff to gain incredibly powerful mechanics and special attacks. Another great quest was added in the game, and this was Sins of the Father. With it, another important area was open to players, this time to the city of vampires called the Darkmeyer. This place gave us the Hallowed Sepulchre, which is now the best way to train agility if you are willing to give up your sanity for great experience rates and even more money training this once boring skill. Darkmeyer also offered a new item called the Daedalt Essence, which you have to mine yourself, and these can be used instead of pure essence for runecrafting, and it will give you 50% bonus experience. Not worth it in my personal opinion, but if it sounds attractive to you, go for it. New death mechanics were introduced into the game, and we have gravestones back in OSRS in case you die. If you don't make it back in 15 minutes, you can visit Vet's office to reclaim your items for a fee. A new place was added to the wilderness called the Ferox Enclave, which hosted Last Man Standing, Clan Wars, and a convenient banking area for a lot of players, especially Ironman. If coming here, be careful not to leave the area as it's in the wilderness and you don't want any trouble. After that, we were given an activity called Mahogany Homes. This would become a less expensive but slower alternative to training construction, and it also gave us a saw which we can wield, as well as a builder's outfit for bonus experience when training. Finally, to close out the year, a new quest was added called Poor Sign of Interest, which gave low-level players a new Slayer Master. There was a much-needed rework to the costume room in player-owned houses, which also greatly benefits Ultimate Ironman. And Old School RuneScape was launched on Steam, as well as a few nice features to the client inspired by some of RuneLite's plugins. And now we come to present year. 2021 started with the release of Soul Wars, which was originally released in RuneScape 2. There was a much-needed update to the Shades of Morton minigame, and is now pretty much the only way to make profit while training prayer. And also, yoinked from RuneScape 2, we have the addition of shooting stars for players to earn a brand new ring which aids in mining, as well as a recolor option for the Prospector's outfit. We have a new skilling boss for fishing, and this one is called the Temporos, which you can find in the desert. And free-to-play players were also given a new quest called Below Ice Mountain. Once inside, you have new ways of training mining, smithing, and prayer. And speaking of fishing, Fishing Trawler was slightly reworked, as games are now shorter, but the angler outfit pieces now have a 1 in 12 chance of dropping as opposed to 1 in 8. A new, fairly controversial quest was added called A Night at the Theater, which literally need you to complete the Theater of Blood, and that's pretty much it. It was later reworked, and from the start it also gave us Story Mode Theater of Blood for beginners to get used to the bosses. After that, we had an official clan system added to the game, which was the roots for the group Ironman game mode. Clans now have their own area and a dedicated chat and rank system. Soon after, Korend was given a big rework as a part of a quest called A Kingdom Divided. Along with it came a very nice rework to the Arceus spellbook, and you can now summon creatures called Thralls to aid you in combat. And speaking of combat, a permanent solo instance for the Nightmare of Ashihama called the Phosani's Nightmare was added into the game. This was a way for solo players to kill it in a much efficient and faster way who are in search of its expensive drops. We had more quality of life changes coming to the Slayer skill, and the two of the most important ones were a little rework to Slayer helmets. And finally, you can now store a Slayer task for you to complete later if you are not feeling up for the challenge. But honestly, this is a great way to guarantee back-to-back tasks if you are looking for a specific drop from a Slayer monster. Combat achievements were released in July, and it meant that the Infernal Maxscape is not the king of flexes anymore, as completing this piece of content will have you grinding for hundreds, if not thousands of hours for the new best-in-slot flex helmet, the Zux Slayer Helm. This one is a serious challenge if you are looking to push your abilities to the limit, so definitely add this one to your to-do list. The Deadman tournament is back, and oh boy was there some juicy drama surrounding the Deadman Reborn finals. Regardless of the drama, if you were a fan of this mode back in the day, it seems like it's here to stay once again after a few tweaks to the servers. And as of making this video, the last update to hit the servers was the Equipment Rebalanced, which changed the stats of many important items in the game, most importantly things like Dragonhide Armor and the Din's Bulwark. Not a huge hit, but a lot of players had mixed feelings about this one. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we finally come to the end of the video. If you watched until now, and as a thank you for your patience and your time, leave a comment below with the word update and let me know if I forgot an important update through the years. I will pick one comment at random and that person will walk away with one bond in 1 week's time. A massive thank you to all my channel members, specifically the legends that are Josh B for being part of the Infernal tier and Mr. Moldybot in the Nazi tier. If you would like to monetarily support this channel and receive a ton of cool benefits and perks, make sure to click the join button below, and also so I can feed my cute puppies. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one, where I will do something slightly different. So, have a great week, enjoy Group Ironman, and I will see you then. Peace.